Good evening,
Hi,
listeners.
I'm Amy
I'm Amy
Shannon from
Shannon, and
Amy's
welcome
Bookshelf
to Amy's
Reviews
Bookshelf
podcast,
Reviews
where
podcast.
stories speak, voices
Conversations,
matter, and words
revelations,
come
and
alive.
inspirations
If you
behind the
are
book. You never know
following this
where the
on
conversation will lead us, so
Spotify,
let's find out.
please
Tonight we have two guests with us.
follow the
Thank you for
podcast.
joining us, and will you please introduce yourselves?
Now, the
Go ahead, Burl.
interviewees
Okay, I'll go
have the
first.
option
I'm
of
Girardot and
having an
Burl, living less in my
audio-only
own mind,
podcast session
and
or a video
taking
podcast
time out of my
session.
busy schedule,
This is
writing
a
books.
video
That's
podcast
Frank
session,
Girardot
and
next
I
to me
hope
there.
that you enjoy
He's
it.
also an
It
author
will
of this book
also
that we're going to talk
be
about today.
shown on YouTube.
Yes, and
So
I am
if
Frank
you are
Girardot. That is
watching
true.
this on YouTube,
I'm a
please subscribe.
journalist
Thank you.
and a writer. And Burl and I have collaborated actually on 3 books now, all of which have done pretty well. And we're looking forward to this great conversation with you today, Amy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, because that was one of my questions, if you had collaborated before. So let's start with this the book now. So can you give us a little background on the book and the title and all that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to let Burl talk about how we got the story, but then I'll tell you a little bit about some of the reporting that we did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. When I first came to Los Angeles in, I guess it was November of 2003, I guess, one of the very first people I met was a woman named Kelly Lee. She was doing intake at Bet Teshuvah, which is a Jewish temple and a rehab and, helpful place. And I'd just been through a real rough time, lost my insurance, lost my access to my medication, and they rescued me. So I was happy about that. And she did the intake. We became friends. And years later, we were still friends. And one day I'm over visiting she and her husband. She says, Burl, you write true crime. I think I got a heck of a story here. And she pulls out transcripts. And I wish I would have grabbed this one. It was the judge at the time. It was really important. We could have had this in a book if I would have grabbed it. Actually, when they went to the judge and said, suppress this evidence, suppress the fact that this person was an agent of law enforcement. And he goes, okay. And that's when I got hold of Frank and said, hey, you want to help write this one? And he said, yes, take it away, Frank.
Okay. So thank you. So what we have really is a pretty typical Los Angeles murder. This is where we start. And but as the story begins to unravel, there's 3 people in the room at various times with the victim. And then as we peel the layers of the onion back, we find out that one of them is an affiliate of the Russian mafia, for what it's worth. They don't have a real name, but we'll just call it the Russian mafia.
Okay.
And then as we peel back a little bit further, we find out that not only is he an affiliate of the Russian mafia, he's also an informant for several various law enforcement agencies. And we hit upon this really wild tale that essentially there's a dim sum menu for cooperation with the federal government. You give us a crime, we'll give you a reduced sentence. So we are figuring out so our crime is really part of a bigger scheme to get somebody out of prison. And that's where this whole book sort of comes from.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing is what it appears, and what it is ain't what it is. And the question, when we first started to investigate this, when we told Kelly Lee, okay, we're going to go ahead and write this book, we got a publisher and everything. First thing we did is we got hold of these Russian mobster people and said, your major characters in this book, and as Frank will confirm, their lawyers said, please don't write this book. Please don't write it. And we said, well, we're going to write it anyway. I don't know if that endangers us or endangers them, but we wrote the book anyway. We'll see what happens.
I think enough time has passed that nobody's in danger. You know, all the things that we uncovered are things that are mostly in the public record.
Mhm.
You know, we discovered pretty early on that there was a man affiliated with this crime who had a pretty high profile within the Russian mafia. And as such, he participated in some pretty wild scams. For example, back in the 90s, he was working with the Italian mafia to essentially sell gasoline without paying federal excise tax. And they would pocket the tax money that they collected. You know, this is a scheme that netted millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's funny, like one of the Italian mob guys has made a whole career out of talking about how this scam, you know, changed his life. Then we found
Was it for the better or the worse?
well, I
For
think
the
maybe
better,
for the better, right?
financially, yeah.
Yeah. But at the heart of
Millions.
it, at the heart of this story is really this kid, this homeless kid who was convicted in this murder, and how he was exploited in the days leading up to and after the crime is pretty significant. And when you pull it all together, you have this tale about Southern California that doesn't involve celebrities, it doesn't involve traffic, it doesn't involve you know, the palm trees or the swaying breezes or any of that. It's a story about real people caught up in a crime that's bigger than all of them. And what we try to do is peel back the layers, get down to, you know, what the crime was, and then put everything back together so you can see the universe that everybody exists in.
Wow.
Yeah, that's that thing about seeing the universe that everyone is in. I was just contemplating that very thought, rereading the book last night, because you know, we start with a dead guy on the bed. He's fully clothed, looks like he's taking a nap. There hasn't been a break into his apartment. It's in fine shape, but the bedroom door, which was locked from the inside, someone wanted to get in there so bad that they actually ripped all the doorknob or the door handle from the outside almost totally off the door to get
Wow.
in. And the murder was reported, called in. The first phone call was from the dead man's telephone. Now,
So
this is all very unusual, but you got to remember this fellow was murdered in the late evening. By morning, arrests have been made, charges have been filed. It's all wrapped up with a bow. There's a very speedy trial. And this kid, incredibly shy, no history of violence, no history of crime, is sent to prison 20 years to life.
oh man.
And take 20 years later, Kelly Lee comes to us and says, "Hey guys, I think I have a true crime story for you." She was right.
Yeah, it's true crime. It's as true crime as you can get. You know, in the past, when Burl and I had worked together, the first book that we did, it's called A Taste for Murder. And it's about a woman who poisoned her husband to collect insurance money. And it's a very, you know, straightforward kind of thing, right? You have
Yeah, it sounds like a common story that you would hear, like women like poisoning and, you know,
Yeah.
things like that.
That and knives. Women like poison and knives.
yeah. And it's very straightforward, you know. It's you know, it's that kind of a story. What we just said, it would fit into a 30-minute Discovery Channel show on
Right.
women with poison. And in fact it did. And
Yeah. Well, it's an hour show, actually.
yeah, it was an hour.
So
Then
did
the
she
next-
do it little by little, or did she do it all at once?
Very
Or some-
deliberately and all at once.
Oh, wow.
And
Great.
the one thing that we did find in our reporting was that she had done it before.
Yeah. Well, that was horrible. Yeah.
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 And
Apparently,
so go ahead, Burl.
well, this is so mind-boggling. It's so horrific. And being she was already found guilty of murdering her husband, they just went, "Oh my God, we can't even bring this up." She murdered her own baby child by shoving a pacifier down the kid's throat and then suing the pacifier company and having already taken out a massive insurance policy on the newborn kid, planning in advance, once she knew about the recall of the defective pacifier, to murder her own baby for money. Now that's about as, I mean, that's so shocking. It's almost impossible to even wrap your head around that one.
Yeah, I
And I can
mean,
tell by your expression that you're dumbfounded at
Didn't
least.
expect it.
no,
Yeah.
I live in upstate New York, and when I was younger, there was Mary Beth Tinning, and she killed all of her children because when her first one died, natural causes, she got all the attention, and then the attention
Yeah.
started wearing off. So then she kept having children and then killing them, and
So she could get more attention. Yeah.
yeah, so she liked that, the people, supporting her during her grieving moment. Eventually, I think after 5 or 6, I don't remember the exact number because I was just a kid, but we lived in the area, so my mom's like, "I know that lady," and I'm like, "Oh,
Wow.
wow," and I'm like, "Okay, all right." It was one
Well,
thing
people
that,
do strange things. We
yeah,
also had written, and that's what it's actually going to come out in another book. We had in a little book, Madeline Williams, Deadly Sins. She murdered her 2 little boys and then attacked her husband 97 times with a samurai sword. And
must
then
have been
once
very
he's
angry.
dead, yeah, well, she's had her plan. It's all planned out. She sat down and wrote him a suicide note. Yeah, who's going to fall for that? That her husband committed suicide by
She actually
slashing
posted
himself?
she posted the suicide note on face or MySpace actually
Oh,
uh,
jeez.
at
So
that time.
he
That's an
decided to kill
ongoing.
himself 96 times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and after
that works.
suffocating the children.
Oh man.
Just yeah, pretty awful. That's a terrible story, and that just has left so many wounded and broken lives in its place. We collaborated on a book with a former, the second most corrupt New York City police officer. He was involved in the 1990s scandal in the 7-5, which has been a documentary now on Netflix and may soon be a feature picture. Ken Urell, basically, he worked with guys in his precinct in Brooklyn to sell drugs, rip off drug dealers, and steal money from anyone and everyone that they came into contact with. And
Yeah.
it's a pretty great. That book's called Betrayal in Blue, and it's a pretty rip roaring story. And in it,
Yeah.
we talked to former cops and former drug dealers. Actually, a guy connected to the Colombian cartels who talk about New York in late 80s and early 90s
80s.
and
Yeah.
how wide open it really was for them to do all those things and get away with it.
Yeah, I
You know,
had
you brought up an interesting thing that when we were doing the research on Betrayal in Blue, Frank gets a call from Adam Diaz, who worked for the Dominican drug cartel, and he was paying these 2 cops far more a week or a month than they made all year long. But when people have asked me, they say, "How do you get these criminals, like heads of drug cartels, to call you on the phone and cooperate in writing the books?"
yeah,
Well, we
right.
have a fellow from the Russian mob, whose name I could never pronounce. His first name's Stan, and he cooperated fully, talking about what it was like growing up in the Russian mob and what the different groups are like. And we've had people from the American Mafia help with the story as well. They said, "Why do they talk to you?" 2 reasons. One, this is their legacy. They
Right.
want to be accurately portrayed.
Right. Yeah.
Also, they trust us. They know we're not going to screw with them. And we
Yeah.
always tell them, if it was more than 7 years ago, you could tell us anything. Unless it's bank robbery, that's 10 years. And if it's murder, don't talk about it at
Yeah,
all.
we're gonna
felony,
talk
yeah.
about that one. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Recently, I interviewed a brother and sister, and they were their parents were involved in the Colombia cartel in the 70s, and then they grew up with their parents dealing drugs, and then the mother got murdered, and the son actually, he followed in his father's footsteps for a while, but it took him going to prison before he realized, that he had to do something, change his life somehow. And it was pretty powerful. I mean, they were very open about, when the Colombia cartel started in the 70s, it was really going, and they were all part of it, but they wouldn't share their story, no matter if it, looked
Mhm.
bad about their parents or whatever. I mean, there was a judge I interviewed not that long ago. He was also from Wild Blue Press, and he's a judge, but his family had a long history of committing various crimes and kind of in their own mob in Chicago. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
So the kind of stuff that we deal with then.
yeah, I think it fascinates me in a way that like I love how it kind of, you put the victim first. You're not promoting the killer, giving him, all the accolades that he wants, or she. But also there's those, like you said, peeling back the onion, putting pieces back together. And sometimes when you're solving the crime, or the crime is solved, there's that, like, I call it an aha moment, where you're like, oh, that's it. And I've interviewed other, true crime writers. Some were former law enforcement or current law enforcement. Many were journalists. And that is one thing that I can, I like that, what you write and how you write it is a way to inform and also make it's not like reading a police report, there's,
We
I want
try
to say
very
it's
hard to.
rare, but you're not exaggerating, but the way you put words together that can make it more, even if it's so gruesome, but it's not like a police report or anything like that. And that's why I
What-
enjoy reading your work.
Thank you.
One thing
We
I would like
tried-
to mention that
Go ahead, Burl.
I was going to say is this story branches out into so many different directions, from just like the body on the bed, a, a plan to get away with a fortune in gold, to smuggle MDMA, to defraud the government, to frame somebody for murder, to a murder reporter who worked for the LA Times. I mean, it went off in so many directions. One of the things we faced, and we talked about
Let
it a
me
lot,
correct. I got to correct it. The reporter wasn't
right,
murdered, but it was a plot to
a
scare
plot, yeah,
the
right,
reporter.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Is it how do we keep reminding the reader that this all fits together without giving away too much? And
Right.
that was a constant challenge in this
battle.
book. Yeah, battle, because the story goes off. You say, well, what the heck does this have to do with the dead body on the bed? But there's Daniel Patterson, who you talked to at great length, fascinating gentleman, amazing story. And he's pivotal in what happens down the line that leads to this murder.
I
But
think
we
that
don't know that.
it was really what Burl's talking about is this. When we looked at the murder and we said, okay, so this was essentially a setup to get somebody out of federal prison. Why is this person in federal prison? How did he get there? And what are the circumstances around that? And then as we figured it out, we uncovered like all these wild and crazy scams that seem to be happening in vacuums. You know, the MDMA smuggling, a scam to steal gold from the U.S. government, a plan to intimidate a reporter who was writing about a very famous actor, Steven Seagal. And they all seem to be just happening. You know, they're individual news stories. But then you realize, wait, these people involved in this murder are all linked to all these other little stories that are happening in Los Angeles at about the same time.
Wow.
And once you pull that thread and you go,
it all unraveled.
okay, it's like, oh my God, there it is. There's why we're here in this apartment with this schlubby school teacher who, you know, I mean, didn't really do anything. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and, you know, and died. And you know, his death is unremarkable, you know, in the in the annals of murder in many, many ways, and yet it's completely remarkable because it ties so many things together. Now I'm telling you this, it sounds pretty glib. It took us 6 years to put this whole thing together.
Wow.
And it's only, you know, it's like one of those 500-piece jigsaws that are all the same color, right? You know?
Oh yeah, they're all white.
Yeah.
Right. It eventually
Yeah.
it fits together, and you can get the edges of it. But, yeah. but it really, that's what really this was. And when we put that last piece in and said, wow, that's it. And, you know, I guess we're hoping that when readers pick it up and start at the beginning and say, why am I interested in this? And then they get a little bit further in, they'll go, oh, of course I'm interested in this. This is, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
Well, that's what we've heard so far. Kerry Drobin was an attorney and a true crime author, famous for the one about the ATF and the Hell's Angels running with the devil. She absolutely loved it. She was hooked from the beginning, and it kept, even though we branch off and talk about the homeless situation and teenagers and this and that and this and that, it kept her interested, you know,
Well,
because it all does fit together. You
I
know,
can't wait to read
amazingly
it.
enough.
It's on my stack. I have it. It's on my stack, waiting to be read.
that's great.
Yeah,
Well,
I read as much as I can, and I you know, I have a book review website, but and I've been doing it for 11 years now, and true crime really is like my favorite. And I was always, you know, really interested into, you know, the, like I said, puzzles and the forensics. And, you know, I was the one that I loved watching Law and Order Criminal Intent, because they had the other side, you know, like the bad guy and what led up to him doing whatever he did, or she. And I always found that was interesting. And then 20 years ago, I was my husband tried to kill me. And
obviously he didn't succeed.
no, he didn't. He went to prison,
That's
and
scary.
then as soon as he got out, about 9 months later, he dropped dead. Literally,
Oh.
just.
Well,
So I raised
How do
my
you-
sons, and actually, when I look back, even though over the years, I've suffered physical issues from that. It was like I told that to John Hinckley when I interviewed him not that long ago. And I said, sometimes something bad has to happen for something better to happen. And, you know, so that's what I've always believed, because I think that the only way we were free of my husband, he was abusive to my boys. He was a jerk and a drug addict. But it was like a one-time thing, and I'm like, one and done. And I had to fight law enforcement and the DA's office to get them convicted, because they always assume the victim of domestic violence is not going to press charges. You know, so
yeah,
then I kind of wrote my
especially
story.
when you're married.
Oh yeah,
You know, domestic violence and strife plays a huge role in our first book. It's a key component of A Taste for Murder. And in this book, we found that the young kid was the victim of just horrific parental abuse.
So that's why he was
Beaten.
homeless. Did he run away?
Well, he didn't run away so much as kind of drifted away, I think.
Mhm.
He's just kind of failing in school and kind of
He was so
disaffected at
traumatized,
home
really,
and super
really
traumatized
traumatized.
that by the violence in his life,
Yeah.
that he moved away and ended up homeless in Hollywood, which is where a lot of teens end up. There's something glamorous about that sign on the hill
Yeah.
that beckons for miles around, come here. And he did, and he went to a homeless shelter, and it was at the homeless shelter where he was introduced to the Russian mob. And in his mind, it was, well, I'm getting introduced to these people because I'm going to make some money. But really, he was a puppy dog, and they were able to manipulate him to do all kinds of scams well before they ever got to the point where they were in the bedroom with the murder victim in 2004.
How
So
did the victim die?
The victim was strangled. Actually had his throat, or not his throat, I would say his neck broken.
Oh, because I was wondering the way you described it. Like
I got to interrupt there. Got to interrupt.
Okay.
According to the autopsy, there was nothing wrong with the guy's neck. But they did say in the case against our kid who got sentenced to 20 years to life, oh yeah, says the guy testifying against him, I was in the room when he twisted the guy's neck and it made a sickening sound. Well, I've got the autopsy report and I'm looking, and I've seen it, they've seen it. Nothing wrong with the guy's neck. He was strangled to death, asphyxiated in a very unsophisticated manner.
Right.
And it's a very intimate method of murder.
Yeah, that was how my life was supposed to end. But it takes a lot more strength to strangle someone with their hands than with some other type of object.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and these guys were Jimmy, our main character, and his friend from the Russian mob are strong men. They're not like weak guys.
Right.
And what?
Although Kelly Lee, who brought this case to us, but I said, do you think that it was Bart, the Russian guy, that he goes back, the door's locked from the inside, he gets in there, the guy's still alive, he's drunk, he's out of it, that he finishes him off. And she goes, no, it's just Mark's too big of a pussy. He wouldn't have the energy or the nerve to actually kill the guy. If he had someone with him, maybe he had someone else do it. Well, that's all conjecture.
We
Like
don't
the
know.
O.J. Simpson.
Like
O.J. Simpson. Found not guilty, but we could talk about how he did it, but he was still legally not guilty.
Right.
Same thing with
and
Mark,
that's
legally not guilty.
that's the key component here, is that Mark was found not guilty by the jury, and Jimmy was convicted and sent to San Quentin, where, by the way, you mentioned Clark Rockefeller.
Yep.
He and Clark Rockefeller were very close buddies.
Oh, wow.
Amazing. Small world.
It's a
Yes,
small world
so.
once you get into the joint. Yeah.
And when you are on trial and found not guilty, doesn't necessarily mean you're found innocent.
Well, I don't know.
I know they say that, but
I mean, the guy, for whatever we want to say about him, a jury, did find that he wasn't culpable in this instance.
right.
But there's lots of other things that we detail in the book where he was culpable. And chief among them are these, wild fraud cases where, bad checks and forged checks and fake checks and all kinds of stuff are happening, and this whole money laundering scheme is taking place. And it from criminal convictions and court records and stuff, Jimmy's co-defendant was clearly involved in a lot of scammy activity for many, many years.
What always amazed me about him was that here was a guy that was in the Russian mob and fell to a very low level. He has an uncle who's very high level. Apparently, he didn't get much of a high level education because he does really stupid stuff. When he takes bad ID, fake ID to a casino, you could not take fake ID to a casino. They're looking out for that stuff all the time.
Right. They
I mean,
know it
he
more than
gets-
law enforcement sometimes.
Oh, he gets arrested. We have a whole section of the book follows his almost weekly arrests for identity theft and fraud, one
Right.
right after another. Do you think he learned? Nope.
Nope.
His learning curve was about as good as Jimmy's was.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
guess,
cas-
yeah,
The casino scene is like, it's a classic, really. It's like who has the balls to do this? And then if it's not a ballsy thing, then it's certainly
it's
got to
stupidity
question.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I spoke
There's
with Dennis Carson not that long ago, and he was talking about the stupid things because he wrote a book about that every killer leaves a trace.
His
And
grace, yeah.
uh,
Excellent book. Yeah.
and it was just like he was talking about the stupid things that they would do, and they thought they wouldn't get caught, but they were too cocky, or they left something behind that they didn't realize. I locally several years ago, there was a bank robber who actually went in and tried to get a check cashed. And then on the back, he wrote, this is a robbery. But when he handed the lady his actual ID,
To cash it.
really, I mean, he said, yeah, this is a robbery, and here's where you can come and
He
get me.
deposited my account. Yeah. Well,
just a minute. Yeah, that's stupid criminal tricks.
Oh, yeah.
All that.
Frank points out in the book basically where if you live in that area where the casino was, if you live in a place where Towers or Garden is in the name of the apartment complex, it has neither. And I
Yeah.
love that line because it was really true.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Oh, I
the
want to thank
corruption
you.
corridor, they call that.
Yeah, I want to thank you both for being on the show, and definitely when you have more books coming out, you both are welcome back individually and together. I loved having you. So thank you
thank you.
very much for being on the show, and thank you, audience, for listening.
Thanks
you
for
wish-
having us, Amy.
Oh.
Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And,
Oh, I loved it. Thank you.
Okay.
I love
Buy
your
several copies.
work, and I can't wait to read this book. I'm telling you.
Okay.
If you wish to be a part of the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Don't forget, if you wish to comment on this show or any show, comments are available, and yes, I will read them. Please follow this podcast on Spotify. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for watching this video podcast. Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast is a takeoff of Amy's Bookshelf Reviews website, and which does reviews and also author promotions. You can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com for more information. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe, follow, and keep listening. Thank you.